Now I know it's pretty hip right now to hate on everything Kathleen Kennedy does. For all the right reasons, because somehow everything Kathleen Kennedy and her team touches turns to shit. But I'm here to say that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is actually a pretty enjoyable movie. Does that mean it is perfect in any way, shape, or form? No, it's actually kind of ridiculous. But that is exactly the point of an Indiana Jones movie.
Get back!
Now, before we get started, a little bit of history about me. I love Indiana Jones movies. I've loved Indiana Jones movies ever since I was a little kid, and my brother, whom I watched The Dial of Destiny with, shoved it in my face. I also did not like The Temple of the Crystal Skull because it wasn't an Indiana Jones movie, to my opinion. That said, for me, Indiana Jones movies are all about just sitting down with a bag of popcorn and a Coke and just having a damn good time. You laugh your ass off with a bunch of the ridiculousness, some of the Grinch-worthy humor, and you get back up after the movie and go on with your life, and you just had a good time. And that, for me, is exactly what the Dial of Destiny does. It isn't perfect. There is a bunch of stuff in there that I don't agree with, that I just don't really like, but there's also a bunch of good stuff in it. And for me, the good stuff in this movie actually outweighs the bad stuff, which makes it a good movie. Now, I see a lot of people on YouTube and everywhere complaining about the ridiculousness of this movie and some of just the over-the-top action and over-the-top stuff that happens in this movie. But let's not forget that Indiana Jones himself survived a nuclear bomb by hiding in a fridge. He jumped the minecart from rail to rail and survived. He slowed down said minecart with his feet. He fought Nazi Germans on top of a tank while it was headed for a freaking cliff. Indiana Jones movies are supposed to be ridiculous. Indiana Jones movies are supposed to be just a good time. And Indiana Jones movies are supposed to not be overanalyzed. Now I want to split this review up in 3 parts. The bad, which is the stuff that I really disliked about this movie. The okay, which is the stuff that I think was okay and even enjoyable, but isn't really necessarily that memorable in the long term. And then there is the good, which is the stuff that I really loved. And somehow there's more good stuff in this movie for me than there is bad stuff. There's some really bad stuff, but there's just more good stuff, which outweighs the bad stuff, which makes it a good movie. So let's first get rid of the bad stuff in this movie. And the first thing I want to talk about is the overusage and really bad usage of CGI. Now, this is a problem not only in Indiana Jones, it is a problem in Hollywood tout court, right? But the CGI in Indiana Jones, starting from the beginning of the film, is just really bad. There's some good CGI in there, like the in-your-face CGI overall is pretty okay, and it is enjoyable enough, and it doesn't really get in the way, but there's some parts that are really bad, and I just don't know, they feel rushed. For example, there is this scene where Indiana Jones comes out of a river with his friend, and they have the relic, the Dial of Destiny, at least half of it, and they're like, yeah, we were saved by the Americans, and in the background there is a Nazi train that is being unloaded by American soldiers, and they are unloading all of the relics the Nazis stole, and all of these soldiers in the background are all CGI, and they walk like they are from Grand Theft Auto 3, and they walk like this, and they take a box, and then they walk like this, and they walk again. They look like freaking Tetris characters, and Tetris doesn't even have characters, so that's how bad it is. There's also the beginning of the movie opens where Indiana Jones is the age where we know and love him, like the World War II age, and of course, Harrison Ford isn't that age anymore, so they had to do something to de-age him, so it is played by another actor, and it is then Harrison Ford CGI face slapped on that actor, and it is just not done very well. Now, that didn't really bother me that much because I know they just have to do something in order to make that work, but my brother, who was sitting next to me in the theater, he just wanted to leave the theater, I think, at that point. Like in the start of the movie. The second bad thing I want to talk about is the humor. Now, not all of the humor in this movie is bad. There's actually some pretty good lines in the movie, but overall, some of the humor and a lot of the humor does not land. On script, on paper, they are funny moments. They are really cool moments that make the characters cool, that make the characters funny, but it just doesn't work out. Now, creating humor in an action movie and actually having it be funny is a really hard feat to pull off as a director, as an editor, as whoever works on the movie at that point in time. Two examples. There's one example where Helena Sharp, who is the co-lead of Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones, is driving a motorcycle with Short Round II, who's now called Teddy, on the back of the motorcycle, and they're driving through a mountain pass. And they're following a car that has Indiana Jones because they have Indiana Jones, and she's like, oh no, we need to go save Indiana Jones, blah, 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 blah. So they drive through this mountain pass, and they're following this car, and she has no idea if the car's in the future going to take a left turn, a right turn, or it's going to go straight ahead, but somehow she's driving, and she turns around to this Teddy person on the back, and she's like, shortcut! And she turns into a random freaking field in a country where she's never been before. That could, like, the field could have rocks, horses, cows, hedges, I don't know. And she somehow knows a shortcut, which makes absolutely no damn sense to me. And I think it is just this. I don't know if it's the fault of the actor. It's not the fault of the actor because she's a really good actress, and it is not the fault of the writing because I think it could have been a cooler moment, but it's just the way they just do it and then leave it. I don't like it. But one of the worst moments in the film that are supposed to be funny is when Harrison Ford is on the street with Helena Sharp and Teddy, and they just came out of a big bar fight thingy, and the police show up, and they raise their weapon, and they're like, in Moroccan language, they're like, put your hands down and all of that stuff, and Harrison Ford is all like, okay, everybody stay calm, lower your weapons, right? And then the police lower their weapons, put it away, get in the car, and drive away, and then we see this bunch of people like mobsters show up, bad guys basically show up because they have a thing to like, they want to get money from Helena Sharp or something like that, and the police actually get away because they saw the gangsters, but Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, thinks he did it, right? Which could have been really, really funny. It's one of those moments like in the old movies where Indiana Jones is standing in front of this knife guy who does this entire knife thing, and he's just like, and he just shoots him, right? And there's this other moment in another movie where it's the same, like, there's this knife guy, and he's like, I'm gonna shoot this guy again, and then, oh shit, he has no revolver in his holster, right? Those kinds of funny moments, but they don't film it well or don't edit it well enough for it to be funny. It's really not funny. And the only thing they should have done is put the camera in front of Indiana Jones and have him say his lines while the mobsters behind them were getting out of the car with their shotguns and their rifles and their scimitars and all of that stuff, and he doesn't know, but we know, and it could have been this longer moment or whatever. I think they just cut it too much, right? But it could have been this somewhat longer moment, only like 5, maybe 10 seconds longer, and it would have been funny as hell. And it's all through this movie where stuff like that on paper is pretty funny, the writers make a pretty funny scene, and the editing or direction or whatever it is completely fucks it up. Another bad thing is something that I think is really a shame that it is that bad. And it is kind of the same thing that happened to Star Wars to Rose's character. A perfectly executed character by an actor and by writers, and then completely destroyed by the movie makers by just not having it make sense that a character is in the movie in the first place. And I'm talking about a CIA agent, a female, really powerful CIA agent by the name of, I have to peek, Mason, and she works kind of with the bad guys because they kind of have a joint thing they need to do. They both want to find their relic for different reasons, but they both want to find it. So they're working together kind of, but she's still a CIA agent and she works with the bad guys, and she's constantly bickering with the bad guys because the bad guys just shoot witnesses, and she's like, we can't shoot witnesses, all of that stuff. And she starts out as an incredibly cool character, an incredibly well executed character by the actor. In the beginning of the film, I'm like, wow, she's really cool. And then I saw the poster in the hallways of the movie theater, and I saw she was really small on the poster, and she was, I was like, yeah, she's probably going to die or something like that. And she just doesn't have any place in the movie. She doesn't need to be there. Like, the bad guys are really bad guys. They're vicious bad guys. And she's just also there. And then she stops being there. And there's nothing more to it. The bad guys would have been the same bad guys without her, which I think is a damn shame for characters that have so much potential. Moving on to the okay part of this movie, and I'm gonna say humor again, because some of the humor, although really bad and cringeworthy, other stuff in the movie is really funny, and I don't want to touch on this too much because I want you to experience the good humor in this movie. But the good humor in this movie is actually more about the ridiculousness of what is going on, like Indiana Jones driving a tuk-tuk with 3 people in it and then breaking down, all of that, like, more towards the slapstick humor that Indiana Jones movies kind of have sometimes. That stuff is really well executed. Small things like a Nazi person in a car just sitting waiting for his officer to show up, and then it's knock on the window, and he opens his window, and it just takes a second too long to open the window, and then just like a fist in his face, and it's just Indiana Jones who's stealing the car. Like that kind of slapstick stuff that is in Indiana Jones movies. That type of humor in the movies is executed very well.
I've been tortured with voodoo. Been shot 9 times, including once by your father. Sorry.
Another thing that I put in the okay section is something that I personally absolutely loved, but it also pained me to see it. And that is old Indiana Jones. The first part of the movie is the Indiana Jones at an age we know him, World War II, all of that stuff. But then it is Indiana Jones in, if I'm not mistaken, early 70s, end of the 60s, on Moon Day, where there is this parade with the astronauts and all that stuff going on. And he's really old. He's more Harrison Ford than Indiana Jones at that point in time. He lives in this crappy apartment, just sits in his chair. He wakes up and his neighbors are too damn loud. And he goes over there with a baseball bat. He's like, your music is too loud. He's that dude that's really hates the entire world. He hates his job. He's lecturing like in a very boring way because his students aren't interested in the subject. Also, he's just lecturing in it like he's been doing for the last couple of like 10 years or 20 years or something like that. So it is funny where you got this old grumpy dude, and you have this moment where he is this younger Indiana Jones in the summit of what he can do, and then suddenly snap, you have this old and grumpy dude, which I think was really well done and really well executed. There's a scene where he sits on a subway and he just looks at this person who has this helmet on. They're like an astronaut, right? They're dressed up like an astronaut, and he's like, oh, so stupid Moon Day people. I think it's done very well. It's just Harrison Ford being Harrison Ford, basically. But it also pains me. As a fan of Harrison Ford, as a fan of Indiana Jones, as a fan of the series, as a fan of whatever Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford has done, like Indiana Jones and Indiana Jones in Space and other movies. It pains me. It just pains me to see this guy get that old. Another okay part about the movie is the character of Helena Sharp. Now, the actress who plays the character plays it so well that I hate her, which makes her a good actress, because we are supposed, as viewers, we're supposed, in this first half of the movie at least, we're supposed to kind of hate her, because she's kind of an asshole, and I absolutely love that, because we as fans, about Star Wars, about Ghostbusters, about freaking everything, we have been complaining, me included, that all of the female leads are too much of Mary Sue-like. They're too much, they can do everything, they're good at everything, they are every man's friend and they are likable and all of that stuff, and now they put a female lead in there that's actually a bitch, and I love it. She's a complete bitch. She sucks. She's constantly fighting with Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones is constantly fighting, and she is this perfect co-lead. She's a co-lead. It's an Indiana Jones movie, but she's a co-lead, and she's like the contrast of Indiana Jones. She's doing the same stuff for different reasons, for wrong reasons, and I love this about her. And she as an actress does such a good job of us hating her. I think just the writing is not really that good at certain times. There's these cringy lines she says in the movie. She literally says, I'm beautiful, and she literally says, I'm awesome, I'm self-sufficient, which she is. And she can say that. If she looks into the mirror, she can say she's beautiful and self-sufficient because she is. But we as viewers already know she's self-sufficient. We already know she's beautiful. We already know she's powerful. We already know she's strong. She doesn't have to say it. They show it already. They've been showing it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then she's like driving a tuk-tuk, and she's saying it while Indiana Jones is driving another tuk-tuk. And I just think those lines in there are not like, they don't add anything to the movie. They don't add anything to the character. And that's why I'm putting the character in the okay section. While executed very, very well, while I love hating her in the first half of the movie, of course, she turns around and everything is well, and she starts loving Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones starts loving her back and all that stuff. We hate her, and that's a good thing, but it's just, they take her lines and they just give her some of the most Grinch-worthy lines in the entire movie. And giving a character like this a flaw, like her being a bitch and her doing stuff for the wrong reasons, actually leaves room for character development. I like that she's this powerful woman, that she's beautiful and self-sufficient. I like that about her, but I also love that she's a bitch so that she can turn around and not be a bitch. Like, my brother was sitting next to me in the theater, and he literally said, if I was Indiana Jones, I would shoot that bitch. And he was actually right. There is a lot of reason for Indiana Jones to shoot Helena Sharp in the first half of the movie. But he doesn't do it because, first of all, he's Indiana Jones, and second of all, they give a very good reason in the movie for her not shooting her, because they are kinda in a loose way related, but also not related. I don't want to spoil that part, but there is a good reason for him not to shoot Helena, and all becomes well in the end. She becomes a really cool character, and she's really cool, and the movie is really cool in that aspect. So now that all of the bad stuff, and the okay stuff, and the Grinch-worthy stuff is out of the way, let's go into the good stuff. The stuff that makes me like this movie a lot. And I really want to talk about the plot and the villain. It is what makes this movie shine, and it is so incredibly good. Not per se talking about the story that like leads up to the plot thingy, but like the plot itself. But I'm going to wait until the end of the video to talk about that, because that is the main spoiler section of this video, because I will spoil the main plot so you can click away in time. You have enough time to click away if you feel like there's going to be too much spoilers in this video. Now, I want to say two things before I talk about the plot. One thing that I really loved about this movie is that it is an Indiana Jones movie. There are other characters, main characters even, but this movie feels like an Indiana Jones movie. It is about Indiana Jones' last adventure, getting back in the saddle at one point in the movie, literally, and just doing his Indiana Jones thing. And all of the characters in the movie are there to strengthen that idea, to make Indiana Jones more Indiana Jones. The female lead is there to fight with Indiana Jones and make us feel like Indiana Jones is still the same dude with the same values. All of that stuff is really an indie movie. And that was my problem with Crystal Skull, which was a somewhat decent adventure movie to my opinion, but it wasn't an indie movie. It was just a decent adventure movie that had Indiana Jones in it. And this one is not that. It is an adventure that belongs to Indiana Jones, and I love it. Another thing that I want to talk about really quickly is the fan service. Sometimes fan service in movies is really, really bad in the way where you as a fan see it and you're like, oh cool, that was cool fan service. And when you're not a fan and you see it, you're like, what the fuck was that? Why would they put that in this movie? What's going on? But with this movie, it is so subtle that you really need to be a fan to notice it. And if you're not a fan, or you only saw the movies like once or twice back in the day and maybe like 2 weeks ago, you don't notice it if you haven't watched the movies 1,000 times like I did. But when you did, you notice it. There's moments in here where they're driving the tuk-tuk backwards and then they have to back up and there's 2 camels in the way. And Indiana Jones really takes like a second and a half to look at these camels and he's like, oh, camels. And he just drives away, right? Which is of course a hint to the movie where he says, no camels, no camels, no camels, and then the dude shows up with camels anyway. There is a point in the movie where they have to go into the water and there's eels in the water. And he's like, what are those? And the guy on the boat is like, they're eels, they can bite you. And then the little dude is like, they look like snakes. And Indiana Jones is like, no, they do not. And that's fan service right there. But it's actually funny for people who don't know that Indiana Jones hates snakes per se, but it's more funny for people who know that Indiana Jones hates snakes. And the film is, of course, full of these little moments, these little pieces of fan service. There's one moment where they're flying a German bomber and the engine goes out and you literally hear the sound of the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars not going through hyperspace. Like, that same sound they've put in an Indiana Jones movie. That kind of fan service. For somebody who's not a fan, it's just an engine failing. For somebody who is a fan, it's like, that's the Millennium Falcon. And as Star Wars fans and Indiana Jones fans, we know that the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon is actually based on German bombers, which makes it just a very cool fan service. The plot. Major spoilers ahead, but god damn it, the plot. It is so cool. First of all, I am a sucker for time travel. I'm a sucker for World War II stuff. I'm a sucker for ancient before Christ stuff. And this combines it all in the most ridiculous way. Me and my brother in the theater, we were just laughing with the situation. And we were literally like, this is just too much. What did they do? If you thought the ending sequence, the third act of the Crystal Skull was a lot, this just blows it completely out of the park. It is so incredibly cool for me as a 36-year-old kid. It is just, oh my god. So, what happens in essence? I'm gonna start with the end, because that's the coolest. What happens in essence is they fly. Hold on to your chair. Hold on to your freaking chair. They fly a German bomber, 2-engine, big diesel engine, German bomber, followed by one of those little Cessna-like airplanes, over a battle that is happening in 214 BC, where the Romans are attacking and laying siege to the town of Sicily with siege weapons from boats, and their siege weapons shooting at the ships, and there is this big Roman war going on where the Sicilians, if that's the correct way to say it, have these big ass mirrors that shine on these ships, making them catch fire and blow up. And they're just flying a freaking German airplane. And then there's Nazis shooting, like breaking the windows of the airplane, shooting at the ships. There's Harrison Ford is also on that plane. The female lead, Helen Shaw, is also on that plane. Then the little kid is following that plane because he wants to save the people on the plane. All because they got back through a rift in time and space. Because they have the Dial of Destiny at the ending of the movie. They have the Dial of Destiny, which can make you go back in time. And they go through a rift in space to Sicily. And they end up there at the very point in time where Archimedes, is that correct guy, invented the Dial of Destiny. And he put a mechanism in there. It's kind of like a force deck where you force a card on somebody. He put a dial system thingy inside the gear system that makes you only able to go back to that particular time because he wanted people to show up 2,000 years in the future, show up with a freaking German airplane, helping him and shooting the people in the boats from what the people at that point in time think is a dragon, 2 dragons. That's what happens in the end. It is so ridiculous. It is so over the top. It is so completely well done. As a 36-year-old kid, I absolutely love it. There's a lot to hate if you really break it down, but I just don't want to hate it. I really don't want to hate that part because I love it. Deep down inside, I admit, I absolutely love it. I don't even only love that end sequence because it is there. I love how they set it up. Because the bad guy, Jürgen Müller, is a Nazi, ex-Nazi person who is now in the USA because they helped America land on the moon with his math and stuff. But he's looking for the Dial of Destiny because he believes that if he would have fought the war instead of Adolf Hitler, he would have won. So he wants to go back in time to Sicily, August 20th, 1939 or something like that, to kill Hitler or whatever, I don't know, to Sicily at that particular time. He could take over because he saw Hitler make all those mistakes and he wants to do it right and actually win the war for Germany. And for the entire movie, they set it up like that. They set it up like, hey, it's Jürgen Müller who wants to be the new Hitler and actually do it right, according to him. And it is done so well where you start to believe, and then they fly into this rift in time, and they have Indiana Jones kidnapped, so he's also in that plane, and there's the other dude in the plane and all that stuff. So they go through time with the Dial of Destiny, but it is everything that is about to happen in the ending of the movie is foreshadowed during the entire movie, and you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it. First of all, Indiana Jones is lecturing his students about that very battle in the beginning of the movie. The battle with the mirrors. The battle with the claws taking ships from the water. The battle of Sicily between the Romans and Sicily. He's lecturing that at that particular point, like in the beginning of the movie, which is a foreshadowing of what is about to happen in the end. They see in like their sarcophagus of Archimedes, you can see they open it up and he's wearing a German watch. He's wearing a German watch from World War II. We see helicopter things and airplane propeller thingies in like the carvings in the sarcophagus of Archimedes, meaning that there is this causal effect thingy going on. I don't know the correct way to say that, but there's this effect cause thingy going on, this circle going on where there's a few Nazi people who fall out of the airplane, so Archimedes finds one of them and steals their watch. And he, of course, saw the airplane, so now he's using that in his sarcophagus, and it is crazy well set up. The foreshadowing is amazing, and you don't see it until it happens, and when it happens, you're like, holy fucking shit, that's that battle. It is, and Archimedes. So the German officer thinks he's going back to 1939 Sicily to kill Hitler to win the war, but they actually go back to 214 BC because Archimedes has built a thing that you can only use to go back to Archimedes to 214 BC. So really quickly, my final thoughts about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It is an incredibly enjoyable Indiana Jones movie. That's how I'm going to say it. It is an incredibly enjoyable Indiana Jones movie. It has cringe-worthy moments, but so do all Indiana Jones movies. It has bad humor at points, but so do all Indiana Jones movies. Is it a good time that you can just sit down and have some fun and then move on with your life? Yes, absolutely. Until next video, bye-bye.